Hello, everyone. Welcome to our National Citizenship Services Day virtual event hosted by PALCUS. We are really happy to have you all with us today because we get lots and lots of questions about the citizenship process, and we will be addressing some very specific topics today that hopefully speak to a lot of the questions that we get. Presenters today are Sabrina Broom from Portugal Solutions, Monique Kelly Vallance from Marie B. Kelly and Associates, and Nelson Ponta from Becoming a Portuguese Citizen, and Sandra Carapinha from Learn European Portuguese Online. They will be addressing not only certain paths to citizenship, but also Sandra will be talking about the SIPL language test, which is the requirement for getting citizenship through grandparents. So now we're going to move into talking about what is a Procurador, why do you need one, and what can they do for you? And to give that presentation, we have Monique Vallance, who's with Marie B. Kelly and Associates in Modesto, California. Thanks, Monique. Over to you.
Angela. Hi, everyone. Let me share my screen. Okay. So hi, good morning, good afternoon to those of you on the East Coast. I'm here in California. So our office, I always call us the Portuguese Community Center because seems like we do everything. Procurações, we help with Portuguese citizenships. And so we deal with this a lot. And so there's some really important information that, a lot of people who are applying for their citizenship don't know about. And this process can be very confusing. So I have here some information about the basics of a procuração and your procuradores. So I apologize in advance if I'm going to reiterate some information that's already been given, or for people who already know this information. But I think it's important to start with the basics, and that way everybody's pretty clear. I think all of our presentations kind of overlap a little bit in some ways anyway. Okay, so first we should talk about what is a procuração, this down to the basics. So procuração is very similar to what we call the power of attorney here in the United States. It's an instrument that's executed so someone can be your representative in Portugal. You need one if you need someone to do things like open or close a bank account, buy or sell property, or register legal documents, which is, in this case, what we're talking about today, citizenship, probably what most people, this is what that they will need it for. But what we have to remember is that a procuração, we can't think of it like a power of attorney here in the United States. Power of attorney, I think the United States in general, in some cases, we tend to be a little bit more lax about our procedures, especially concerning legal documents and certificates. So a power of attorney here in the States, a lot of times you can just run over to Staples and buy a packet or download something off the internet. You have the person fill it out. It's usually like a pre-made form that has certain items on there that you can say yes or no. You're giving this person the power to do these certain things. You sign it and it's done. In Portugal, it's much more formal than that. And so you definitely can't do that in Portugal. A procuração has to be prepared and signed in front of a notary public here in the United States, or you can go to your local consulate to sign there. And it must give very specific powers. So if you are asking someone to register a marriage, it has to specifically say, I give them the power to register my marriage. If you want looking to have them deal with your properties, you can say, they have the right to sell my property. And you can be as specific as you want. The more specific, the better, in my opinion, so they can buy but not sell, things like that. If you're thinking, well, why can't I just do something that if you have representatives in Portugal, it's really important, especially if you have properties, to have somebody there that can do business for you, because it just makes your life so much easier. But you also have to be aware that this is something that requires a lot of trust. In the old days, you used to be able to make a procuração that said, oh, I give all the powers, todos os poderes. They can do whatever they want. This makes it easier for the person who lives in the US because they don't have to, keep making new procurações. They don't have to redo things. It's just whatever I need my representative to do, that they can do. The only problem with that is that we had a lot of people who took advantage of that and sometimes did things like clean out bank accounts or sell properties behind people's backs. So that's why now you can't do that anymore, and you have to be very specific. So this can lead to, sometimes you might have to make more than one, because if you make a procuração and give that person a specific power and then change your mind later and decide to add or change something else, you have to do it all over again. So now I kind of already sort of referred to this, but what is a procurador? This is your proxy in Portugal. So they represent you and they can sign for you in any kind of manner. It can be anyone. It can be your mother, your sister, your mother-in-law, your friend, the neighbor. It doesn't matter. There isn't a specific title that the person has to have. It doesn't have to be a lawyer or anything like that. It could even be, it doesn't even have to be someone who lives in Portugal. So for instance, if you have a friend that's going to be visiting Portugal or the Azores, and they and they're going, and you want them to take some documents for you, then you can just make them your procurador, and they take the procuração with them over there, and they file it, and then they can do whatever they need to do. So there is a lot of flexibility in that case. But of course, you need, all of your documents in place and everything done before you leave. But that there is that option there. Just make sure that if you ever make a procuração for someone, it's someone that you can ultimately trust, because this isn't a case where if you give someone the power to sell your property, that nobody's going to call you and say, are you sure this is what you want? I mean, they're going to sign for you as if you are there. So that's what this procurador is supposed to be. But it can also be revoked as well. So if you decide to change procuradores, or you can also share a procurador with your siblings or with your spouse, things like that. And if at some point you decide you want to change, you can revoke the procuração and choose a new procurador. So it's not for life, and it is possible to do. I mean, and if we think about it, it's nice because if you give out 5 different powers of attorney here in the States, and you you could have 5 of them running around out there, and it just depends on who gets there first. When in Portugal, it's much more streamlined, where it's very, structured, where, this person is your registered power of attorney, and, nobody else can show up unless you specifically say, okay, this is the new one. This one will now replace that one.
Is there like an official form, or do you have to get that notarized if you're revoking
Yes.
the procurador? Okay.
Well, you do it like a revocação, and then it goes through the same process as if you were doing a procuração. So who needs a procurador? As I've mentioned, any kind of business you need done in Portugal requires a procurador. In the case of obtaining citizenship, you'll most likely need one to register documents for you, if that's the direction you need to go. There's going to be a presentation following us on registering marriages and divorces, so I won't go into too much detail about that. But as an example, if you're obtaining citizenship through your parents and they were married here, then their marriage would need to be registered in Portugal before you can start your own application. You can, of course, go through the consulate to register a marriage, but sometimes the consulates can take quite a long time. So it kind of varies. Here in San Francisco, we got to a point where it was literally they were taking 3 years to register a marriage. Mm-hmm. Now things are going much more quickly. It's taking, I don't know how many months now, but we got to the point where we just didn't even want to wait on the consulate, because there's such a long waiting time as it is to process applications, that people were wanting a faster route to be able to register their marriages and deaths and things like that. So the fastest way is to get a procuração. If you have someone that lives there, you have like a friend or you have a cousin, you just make them your procurador, you get all of your documents in order, and then you send the procuração to them. They go and register that with the Registro Civil, and that gives them powers to register the marriage. So that really is the fastest way. But of course, it could be more costly because, it's very cheap to do it through the consulate. Whereas if you do a procuração, you have to pay someone to prepare it for you. You have to pay to get all the apostilles, and of course mail it there. So that's a little bit more costly. So it just depends on how much in a hurry you are. But that definitely is the fastest way. And then one thing to remember also is that, so if you need to register your parents' marriage, for example, or register your own marriage, if you already have a procurador that's there, I get this question a lot. Well, what if I already have my procurador? I'll just send it to them. That's good. But if your procuração doesn't already give them the powers to register your marriage, it's not going to fly. So you have to do a whole new procuração that gives them the special powers to register your marriage or register the death or whatever it is. So they're very picky about that, and that's something that has to be done.
So essentially, if you're going to make someone your procurador, the procuração has to say they have the power to register a marriage, open a bank account, make an inquiry. Like, it has to be very specific as to what they are able to do.
Yes. Yeah, the bank accounts are probably the ones that require the most specificity. So we have some of the banks who are like, they want to know what the bank account number,
Wow.
What are they allowed to do? And I'll never forget one time, because we had this standard thing we would put, it would say they're allowed to write checks and take out money and put in money. And the bank actually called to make fun of us. And they said, write checks? We don't do that anymore. I'm sorry, we still write checks here. I guess we're behind the times. But he's like, why did you put that?
That's funny.
Yeah. I was like, you actually took time out of your day to make fun of us. So
make an international call to make fun of you, right?
Right,
yeah.
Exactly. So yeah, so and like if you're giving like dealing with properties and things like that, the more specific you can be, the better, because if you have the parcel number, if those kinds of things are also good ideas. You can usually get along without those, but I usually encourage people, the more specific, the better, because you don't want to leave room for any kind of, opening for other things. So now, how do I obtain a procuração? And this is probably the biggest question a lot of people have. And I know it can be very confusing because you're dealing with a whole other country and we don't understand how these things work. So in Portugal, sometimes you'll have your Portuguese relatives will be like, oh, just get a procuração, just pull the birth certificate, send it over, get it to us next week. And we're like, this is not how it works here, people. So it takes a much longer process. If you have someone to act as your procurador and you don't know where to find someone to help you, so I suggest, you start at your consulate's websites. Wherever your local consulate is, they should have a list of notary publics that they deal with. And those people already have a knowledge of what it takes to write a procuração and have everything necessary in order to make sure that it's going to pass in Portugal. For people who live in the Western 26 states of the United States, San Francisco is your consulate. So if you're in Iowa and you're like, who's my consulate? Yeah, San Francisco. Hawaii, San Francisco. So there are vice consuls here and there. I believe there's one in Hawaii. I heard that they just opened one in Oregon. But if you don't have, probably the majority of the people you're going to see on that list will be living in California. So in that case, if you don't live near enough to a person who does procurações, then what you can do is call someone on that list. We have people call from as far away as Minnesota, Nevada, Texas. So what we do is we prepare the procuração here in our office, and then we tell them to find their own notary. So these can be signed by local notaries. So we prepare the procuração, we find out the name of the notary, we put their name on the document because the document literally says, these people appeared before me and signed this paper in front of me. And then they just notarize, and then you obtain the apostille in your state, and then you can send it to Portugal. So it is possible to do. It's a little bit of a longer process, but it is possible. We have had cases sometimes where people will go to a notary and they present the document and the notary is hesitant about dealing with them because they can't read the document. So I always tell people to remind the notary, you're not there to read the document or understand the document. You're just there to recognize that I am the person that I say I am. You saw my identification and I signed it in front of you. That's all that needs to be done. If an apostille is obtained, they should accept it in Portugal. They have to. That's something that has been a transition in the last few years. Up until, I want to say 5 years ago, that usually you just went through the consulate stamped it, and you sent it to Portugal or the Azores or Madeira, wherever. But then as our consulates started, they had to cut.
Uh-oh, she froze.
Things to the consulate, sending out letters to all over Portugal, United States. So it took a while for everybody to get the memo. So we got a few that kind of pushed back and said, no, we won't accept this because it wasn't stamped by the consulate. And we'd have to email them the letter from the consulate to show that they had to accept it. So now pretty much everybody is on board.
Uh-oh, we lost her. Oh, she's coming back.
I think I somehow got kicked out.
Yeah. But we're back, which is good. It was like, yes. Put you right back on.
Thank goodness.
Yeah.
Let me get back on here. Let me go back. So as I was saying, they have to accept the apostille. If they say something, then there's a letter we send, but everybody's pretty much on board now. They all got the memo. So that's been pretty good.
And where does someone get is it a form specifically that they get from the consulate? Can they download it from the consulate website? No. Okay.
So a lot of times, this is why I highly recommend people go through a professional, because this isn't a form you can download. Sometimes if you are dealing with a legal issue in Portugal, you might get someone who, you get like a lawyer who will send you what's called a minuta. The minuta will have sort of this is the wording that we need in the Procuração, but the Procuração has to be created from scratch, because even if you use the wording that's in the minuta, because it has to include all the names of all the people involved, their addresses, their where they were born, and all of those things. So there isn't really a standard form out there that you can just download and like fill in the blanks. So it's pretty much case by case basis.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So we do get sometimes people who send us a minuta, and they'll be like, okay, can you just, we'll come in and sign. Here's the minuta. And we're like, well, but we still have to put all the information in here. This just tells us what they needed to say, but, it still has to be created. It's not like a form, I would say probably what we see the most, especially as you guys were talking on the last panel about people losing their connections over there, that is probably the biggest challenge a lot of people have, is finding a procurador, because, if you lost contact with all of your relatives there, you don't know anyone there, then you don't know who you can trust. So in that case, if you can't find a procurador, your option is go to the consulate and wait, or you can hire a lawyer, but I'll tell you, the lawyers are pretty expensive. There's a lawyer we deal with in Port that we like, because the other thing is the lawyers sometimes take a long time. You have to be prepared for that. But we like this guy. He's really fast, and he charges €1,000 to register a marriage. So yeah. So if you have no other option and you're in a hurry, you can do it that way. You can hire a lawyer. Your lawyer can be your procurador as well. So there is that option if you're already dealing with a legal issue. But if you don't know anyone there, then your options are pretty limited, or you might have to just go there yourself if you're already going. And that leads me to my last point, which is don't wait until the last minute. So we get a lot of people who call and they're like, I'm going to the Azores next week. I need a procuração. Can you get that done for me? So it's like, no. So first of all, even if we could, we're pretty busy, especially when it comes to summertime. Like everybody's going to the Azores. They all want to take their procurações with them. So we need time to prepare, but also it takes time. So if we're going to go through the Secretary of State, In California, it's taking 2 to 3 weeks for us to get those back. So you have to give at least a month's leeway. Even that's pushing it. So, I highly encourage people, if you know someone that's going to the Azores in, next June, don't wait until May to say, oh, by the way, I need this procuração so that they can register my marriage, things like that. No, you've got to start on that early so that you have plenty of time and you're not stressing. In California, you can go to the Secretary of State and get it back in the same day. You can drive it to Sacramento, but it costs like an extra $250. So
And
it's
your
just
time to
cheap.
drive there.
Right, exactly. So, and at least now they're doing it the same day again. They just started that again. Before, because of COVID, you would have to go there one day, drop it off, and then go the next day and pick it up. Yeah. But now you can get it back in the same day. And I believe in LA, they have an office as well. But yeah, it's just a lot more trouble.
Mm-hmm.
So now there's some common reasons that procurações get rejected. And that's, as I mentioned before, Portugal is very, very picky. I think we're used to how lackadaisical the United States can be. Like, my favorite examples are, we get people who are applying for citizenship and it's like their name was Antonio on their birth certificate. And then when they got married, they used Tony.
Mm-hmm.
Or in some cases, they changed their name completely. And then we're having a hard time trying to prove these people are who they say they are. And so it seems now the US is getting better, but for a long time they weren't. And so we're not used to a system where, you have to do things exactly as it is there. And people, have a hard time with that and don't like to believe it, but it is true. So this is another reason I highly recommend going with a professional and not trying to do the procuração on your own. It's a risk. I mean, I'm not saying it can't work, but you run the risk of it getting rejected. And if it's not exactly the way they need it to be, they will reject it and you can't do what you need to do. So especially if you have someone going for you and they're only going to be there for 3 weeks, they go over there, the procuração gets rejected. Now you're out because there's no way you can get another one in time.
So is there a way around that? Like, can you submit a name change or some sort of document that shows that Antonio and Tony are the same person? Or is it like, you need to pick someone else?
Well, okay. Now for the as far as the procurações go, you don't have to worry about that because you have your ID. But if you're a Portuguese citizen, you're already, if, like, for instance, if you need to register your parents' marriage, your parents are the ones that are going to be issuing the procuração. They have to make sure that their names on the procuração match their names in Portugal exactly. It doesn't matter what. So sometimes what we'll do is if, like, let's say they weren't married when they were in Portugal. So if you're registering marriage, obviously they're still single, and your mom's maiden name was Souza and your dad is Silva, and now your mom goes by Silva because they got married here. We will put, so and so também conhecido por so and so, and then that way that's okay. But that's like the biggest challenge because sometimes people forget what their name was there. They've been here for so long and they'll say, oh, my name is Medea Silva. And I'm like, no, that's not possible. I'm sure you have more names. If they give you like 2 or 3 names, you have at least 4 names. Okay. So if they're not sure, then sometimes we have some contacts there. We'll call and see if we can find out what it is, because they can get really picky. And if you don't have all of your names on there, it's rejected. It has to be just like it is there. If you're a Portuguese citizen, if you're an American citizen, then it's fine. You can match your ID. But that's kind of one of the biggest reasons we see people get rejected. Sometimes we've even seen it get rejected because they didn't sign their name. Because at the bottom, there's a place for the signatures. They don't sign it exactly the way it's listed in the procuração. It gets rejected also. And one time we saw a lady, her last name was Betancourt, and she put kind of like BETT and kind of scribbled the rest. They rejected it. We're like, seriously?
Oh my God. I hope I never have to get one. I don't sign my name at all. It's like initials and a squiggly. So
right, yeah.
I'm going to have to practice my signature.
Right. You'll have to be careful. So we always remind people, put all of your names exactly as it is here. You need to sign this. So another reason is the marital state is not listed, does not match Portugal's records. And I know that we're going to be covering this in the next panel in a lot more detail, but just to let you know, if you were married in Portugal and you get divorced in the United States, you also have to run a divorce in Portugal, or else you're still considered married to your ex-spouse. So that can get kind of awkward at times when people have been here for 20 years and they don't even know where their other spouse is. And we're like, sorry, if you're married to that person in Portugal, you have to have that. So if you're married in the regime de bens adquiridos, which is like community property here, your spouse has to be on a procuração. They won't accept a procuração. You can't do anything behind your spouse's back. Even if here you're divorced, there that you're still married. So you either have to get that person to sign with you, or you have to do a divorce before you can do a procuração without them. And so we've had a few people get very upset about that. And then they try to lie. And that's the other thing, don't lie to your person. Just tell them everything, because all they want to do is help you. And if you lie, they can't help you. So we'll be like, oh yeah, no, we registered our divorce. Yeah, I'm single there. And then we turn it in, it gets rejected. Nope, it didn't happen. So it's just important to, like, we're not here to gossip or, do anything like that. We're not trying to be nosy about your life. We just need, the more information we have, the better we can help you. And the other thing too is about, like with deaths, for example, if someone dies and they're registered and thable married here, but they're single there, they won't register the death. So the marital statuses have to match in order for you to be able to do anything over there. My last point is just remember that every registro civil is different. So we've had it where, this one over here accepts procuração, no problem. We do the procuração exactly the same way. This one over here won't accept it. So sometimes they have their little quirks, and everybody, the tutors that work there, the registro civil, they tend to interpret things a little differently. So we've run into problems where it's like, this passed every other place, but this one place didn't like it for whatever reason. And then we'll have people call us and be like, oh, they didn't accept it, so we have to change something and resend. So it just takes a lot of patience is the key. I always tell people, if you're remembering that you're applying for Portuguese citizenship and you want to be Portuguese, you got to get used to what it's like to be Portuguese, which means we're not in a hurry. So things take time. They're not in a hurry like we are. And, sometimes it's hard. We're in the middle and we're trying to deal with people over there and people over here, and people are upset because these are taking too long. And it's just, we can't help it. We can't make them go any faster.
That's funny.
So. And I think that's everything I had. So.
Okay, great. We do have a question. Does signing the procuração at the consulate bypass the need for the notary and the apostille?
It does. Thank you. I had that and I forgot to cover that. You can, quote unquote, self-prepare your own procuração. For example, you could, if somebody sends you a minuta, you can fill in all the information and take it to the consulate. You make an appointment there and sign it there. And if that bypasses all the apostille things. The only thing is that the consulate will not review it for you, and they will not affirm that what you have is correct. So right. It's a risk.
Okay. That's good to know, because then if you submit it and it gets rejected, you can't get mad at the consulate because they're just there to stamp. They're not there to review. Okay. Right. Good to know, because I think that's probably an expectation that people would have.
I think so.
Like, I went through the consulate. How can it not be correct? Right.
Right.
So yeah. Okay.
And
awesome.
that's if your local consulate does it at all, because ours over here, they tell us straight out, nope, we don't do procurações, find your own notary public. And they don't even have a list online.
Oh, really?
The Portuguese
wow. I thought we were well, ours wasn't doing it at all for a long time either. We with our new consulate that we just got, I like him so much. My husband thinks I'm going to run away with him, but I just love him so much. But they started doing it again, but you have to make an appointment, and you can wait 6 or 8 months for an appointment. So
yeah, actually, when you brought up the point that each registro civil is different, it's the same with the consulates, right? Like true. Some consulates do certain services and others don't, right?
Yeah, that was a good point. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. There was actually a question here about, can you Zoom with the consulate?
No.
I haven't heard of any consulate doing Zoom appointments.
They won't even answer the phone. I mean, you can go online. They're not. So you're lucky if they return your email, honestly. So don't even hope for a Zoom. Just, you have to go down there. If you want to go to the consulate, you have to go in person, and you make an appointment online.
Mm-hmm. So again, for those who asked about contacting our folks on the webinar today. If you actually go to the PALCUS website and go up to the top, resources, consular, you will actually see that they are listed here. We're still adding Nelson's information here. Website updates tend to be a little slow, but again, we will send out information to contact him as well. We also have some of the Q&As that we do on these webinars. We've actually written them out on our website, and so the ones from today will be added eventually, so you can always go find them there. And then, as we talked about before, being a PALCUS member can actually really help your citizenship process. So if you're looking to take the simple test, you can practice your Portuguese during our language conversation groups. And if you are applying through a spouse, you can use our membership as a way to show connection to the community. And there's just some other benefits to being a member. And very easy, you go to our website, click on become a member, and signing up takes 5 minutes. And membership starts at $50 for the year, so quite affordable. There you go. And with that, say obrigado, for me, obrigada. So thank you so much to our panelists. It's like such great information. I think things that we haven't really covered in detail in the past that we get lots of questions for. I know this is not going to be the last webinar that we have. So thank you all so much for your time. Really, really valuable. And thank you to all those who joined us either on Zoom or on Facebook. And if you have any questions, please reach out to us, reach out to our panelists, and good luck with your citizenship process application. Just stick with it. Eventually it will happen. And with that, we'll say have a wonderful weekend, and we'll talk to you later. Thanks so much. Obrigado.